Okay, well, we will get started now. Good morning and welcome. Thank you for joining us in Mentor Education's second live webinar in the Business Insight series. Today we'll be looking at managing remote teams and time pirates in the digital workspace. The idea of remote teams has been something that's happening in the workforce for quite a number of years in a myriad of industries, which include digital marketing, information technology, just to name a few. Certainly in response to recent events and changes, this is happening more and more, particularly here in Australia. And today we're going to take the opportunity to speak with our panelists, expert panel members, to get some insights into how to effectively manage this new working environment, this digital workspace, and linking in with employees in a remote working environment. Amongst our panel today, we have Dr. Mark Sinclair, Founder and Strategic Projects Executive of Mentor Education, Iona McKimmie, the Chief Executive Officer and Chief Academic Officer, and our special guest, Dr. Jim Taggart. Mark, welcome to today's live webinar. Would you be kind enough to give us a little bit of insight about yourself?
Hey James, hi guys. Firstly, look, thank you for organising this, and it's a pleasure to be here. Mentor Education founded that in 2003. I came out of KPMG background, and I was really keen to make sure that we had high quality courses and delivering on point in terms of job outcomes. Prior to 2003, worked at A.T. Kearney, mainly in strategic area, business planning and the like. Did a stint at RMIT, lecturing at the MBA program, and just passionate about education and helping our students.
Excellent, thank you very much. And Iona, welcome to this morning's webinar.
Morning, James. Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to be here talking about one of my favourite subjects today. My background is in education and training. I've been working in the industry since 1987, showing my age there a little bit. And I started off my work with in education and training at the Ministry of Education and Training. And over the years, I've moved forward and I've worked in teaching roles and in compliance aspects and, excuse me, and today I'm the CEO of Mentor Education, and it's my privilege to lead an education organisation of around about 4,500 students that delivers a wide range of courses that are very exciting in the current educational world.
Excellent, thank you very much. And Dr. Jim Taggart, special guest, welcome to today's webinar.
Thank you very much. I too, like all of you, are very excited to hear and listen and provide some insight into the whole area of time management and how you can get greater productivity, particularly in the challenging times we have. I have had an interesting and complementary background, come from a teaching background, started and built quite a successful financial services practice. I've had various roles, taught at all levels through high school through to universities, and sit on about 8 or 9 boards at the moment. So yeah, I think I can make a contribution to people to at least think. And one of the most important things with education is to critically think about you, about where you're at and where you want to be.
Excellent, thank you very much. Throughout today's webinar, we'll work through the content. There is a questions tab at the bottom. Organise yourself with that. And if you do have any questions throughout today's webinar, certainly save them for the end or put them to me, and I'll be sure to ask the panel on your behalf. So getting started, Mark, I'm going to hand on over to you. We have statistics here. Now, this is from the ABS, and this actually goes back a couple of years. But what it showed was that almost a third of all employed people in Australia are working from home, either full-time or part of the time. And this has certainly increased since then. What's your insight into working from home? And if you could talk to some of the drivers that are highlighted on the slide there in front of you.
Love to. Hey, look, firstly, it's a balance. On one hand, most people enjoy not having to travel into work and the time saving that's associated with that. So that's the productivity gain. The flip side, of course, is the connection with people and ensuring that we've actually got the communication, we've got the idea generation, we've got the camaraderie, small talk and all those type of things. Look, it depends sometimes on the nature of the work that you do. If you really want to, if you've got project-based work, it's ideal, right? Because you want some quiet time, you actually got a set outcome and you actually want to achieve that. And we've all got, no matter what job you've got, typically you've got a component of your work that is focused and where you want some, some dedicated time. And you can get that, of course, quite well from a home environment, and people do like that. Look, there is a balance though. There's the isolation, there's the balance of the personal commitment, the family, and there's a whole range of savings from things that you can claim off from tax in terms of working from home and the like. But it's all about productivity, right? At the end of the day, our work wants us to be productive so that we have good outcomes in terms of hitting our goals. And personally, we want to be productive. We also want to get career advancement. We want good job outcomes as well, and we want to be noticed. We don't want to be, somewhere working from home and off the radar. So there is a balancing act, and really it gets down to communication. So it's between your peers, it's between the people you report to, people that you've got direct report on, and it's just really a good balance that when the balance is right, it just works beautifully. You're around if for those special events with your kids if you need it, potentially, or with your family, and then you can make up for that work on a flexible arrangement. It doesn't get better than that from my point of view.
Excellent. So clearly there are benefits to working from home if an organisation is able to implement the strategies to make it work, but we need a range of tools in our toolbox to make that happen. One of those is this idea of instant communication. An email is something which we're all very familiar with, but simultaneous communication is something which I really think lends itself to effective productivity in working in a remote team environment. We have a number of items listed in the toolbox there. Personally, Mark, in what you do with mentor education and some of the things that you've worked with in the past, why are they effective? How are they effective, and how are they best implemented?
Okay. Look, firstly, as a background, for our business, we've always worked probably half a dozen days off-site. We do it as part of our business continuity plan. We've done it for 10, 15 years working that way, where all the staff work that way, and we test our technology and make sure it works. So that's been fortunate that we've got that in place. But the key thing in my mind is the collaboration tools, right? So look, how effective is this conversation right now? Okay, we're here online, we're seeing each other, we're interacting. It's probably even better than being around a table or a boardroom or in an office sharing, because we can see everyone all at once, right? Whereas otherwise you're just looking at one person. So there's a full interaction, and you can facilitate that really well. So look, the video conferencing and collaboration tools are the number one. Look, the things that we like doing is Microsoft Teams and Zoom meetings like this one. Teams is particularly good because it integrates with SharePoint and the like. And it allows us to have categories for each one of our governance or meetings, team meetings. And it's got its scheduling tools there. It's got the phone, chat, all in one.
Excellent. Now, there is a lot of technology available to fill a toolbox to manage this remote team working environment. And one that's often overlooked, and certainly in the research for today's webinar, the mobile phone or the phone didn't come up too often. I mean, how important is it to have those basic tools such as a mobile phone? Can we become blindsided by the availability of technology? How much of a risk is it leaning on our ABN or our broadband connection?
Oh, look, I think the technology is ubiquitous now. It doesn't really matter. It's about flexibility, right? If I'm on the move or I'm remote, then the fact that I can do a video conference on my phone is just fantastic, right? If I have connectivity problems, the home for one time, I've got my mobile. So it's about flexibility, and really it's about, everyone has their own preferences. So I'm not particularly fussed about the, tablet, mobile, or whatever. But look, there's no doubt that mobile is the number one go-to tool that people have, and it's just going to become more and more as the demographic young population moves up the scale, because they were born with mobile phones in their pockets.
Excellent. And look, Iona, I'm just going to fire on over to you with respect to this, particularly on the collaboration and scheduling idea. You spend a fair amount of time designing course material, looking at student learning outcomes and things like that. Work with a team all around the country, if not around the world. What sort of tips, tools, strategies have you found that have worked particularly well in communicating with remote teams using some of the things which are identified up there in front of you?
Okay, James, we have students in a number of countries, and Mentor primarily delivers distance education. So we have challenges to communicate effectively. We have challenges to ensure that students have good outcomes. But not only that, we also need to ensure that our teams are communicating. Some of that, our communication in particular, can be quite complex. As much as information sharing is concerned. So collaboration is incredibly important. And what we have discovered is that in our current environment, the way we're working, we're actually collaborating more. We're sharing more information. We're having more quality conversations, and we're resolving more issues, because in an online environment, in an online communication environment, utilising video conferencing and scheduling conversations to happen, as well as using Microsoft Teams, for example, and using the chat function, and being able to share wikis and files and so on through that platform, we're discovering that the quality of our professional practice has actually improved greatly.
Now, Iona, the idea of live chat, the tool of live chat has come up quite a number of times. One of the issues that's been highlighted that surrounds this, though, is whilst it does have benefits of instant communication, being that there's no tonality or body language to back up, I suppose, what is the text put in front of people, there's a concern that it can be misconstrued or misinterpreted. How do we get around that particular issue? I mean, you know, so somebody might interpret something to be sarcastic or aggressive or whatever it may be, certainly in the workplace environment. So how can we mitigate that, you know, in a text environment?
I think one of the ways that we need to do that, and we utilise Microsoft Teams a lot, and is that we can actually have conversations inside Teams in live time. So we can call each other. The other thing that we have is, if you like, suggestions for people to be able to communicate. And the other thing that is incredibly important is to provide a social aspect to that online environment, especially with chat, so people can have off-topic chats. And it actually ensures that communication and conversations in chat rooms remain appropriate for the purpose of the chat room that's been established. So it's important that, for example, a project team actually utilises their chat feed to discuss projects and discuss things that are about projects, rather than personal topics and cats and kittens that can be in an off-topic thing that, yes, is good fun. And we should also remember that fun is part of what we do, and we have to have some fun in our day every day.
It's also true, James and Iona, that people are remote. So, you know, we're in Melbourne, we're probably around the corner at different places. Jim's in Sydney having fun, and, you know, we wouldn't be able to see him otherwise. And look, the connections are strong. You know, you can smile, you can have fun. Part of it is a structure, I'm sure. Like, you know, we do a startup meeting every day at 9 o'clock. You know, there's the whole team in front of you, right? Whereas right now we've got, you know, one person in Pakistan, and we've got two in Spain, and we've got, you know, in Sydney and all over the place in Brisbane. So, you know, there's the whole team in front of you, and we're all engaged. We do the same at the end of the day, a wrap-up meeting. Gives us a chance to, you know, just see where we're at. But what we're doing is it's authentic, right? We're asking who needs help. You know, how are we going? We're hitting our targets. You know, it's a stand-up startup meeting that we're just doing virtually. And don't forget the games night we've got on Thursday night. You know, there's a whole range of activities that different people participate in. And it's just about connection and authentic connection. So, you know.
And communication and less email. We've discovered that our chat feeds mean less email. So it's actually freeing us up in so many ways and improving our communication, because, you know, we can't all do what we need to do in Teams unless we're communicating.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Now, Jim, I'm going to hand on over to you and to talk about time pirates and management, particularly in a remote working environment. as a bit of a prelude, or I suppose insight, Jim and I had a discussion leading into the design of today's content about this idea of time pirates and the effectiveness of Zoom meetings, and of course, managing teams in a remote environment. Jim, in building your financial services entity several years ago, you would have spent quite a, I suppose, vast amount of time working remotely, but you had quite a serious hub in office. I suppose in talking to this slide, if you could give us some insight in some of the practical strategies that you implemented to do that in working remotely, and also managing your time and managing the time of your employees when they did in fact work remotely.
Okay, thank you very much. Look, I'm really excited because I want to share with you some really, I think, positive things. Sunday Gaship in 2018 did some research, and I want to share this with you because our audience, I want to challenge you. He said that the average person gets disrupted or interrupted once every 8 minutes in a normal day.
What's that, Jim? Sorry?
In our normal...
sorry, I'm interrupting.
Sorry. Well, we get disrupted approximately once. You need to understand this because what we've got on the line is very critical and very smart people. And I say that respectfully. So listen to what I'm saying. We get disrupted once every 8 minutes. That's 7 or 8 times nearly an hour, which is 50 to 60 times a day. The average interruption is 5 minutes, which is about 4 hours a day. And of that time, of those 4 hours, 80% of it was led to finding little or no value. So when you look at that, that is a critical point to reflect upon. And they went on to say as a solution, if you spend 10 to 12 minutes a day, you can save 2 hours. So here are some of my challenges to really get you to think about. What is happening today is the old normal is a new normal. We've got a new normal. What is new normal? The way we communicate. And I've said this so often, the quality of your questions determines the quality of your answers. And so as people who work remote, my question to you is, do you control your time or do other people control your time? That is really critical. And I'll talk about some fundamental things I do in a moment. But at the end of the day, with all the efficiencies and technologies and so on, you are still dealing with people. Please don't forget that. That is so critical. Often I hear people say, James, oh, I've got this platform, I've got this, I've got that. You may have it, but is it doing its job? You are still dealing with people. And what emanates from that for me, when I look at things, it's no good increasing your productivity without positioning it to other people. In fact, that's what causes the frustrations. We become so fixated on increasing our own productivity that we actually become inefficient because we have not created the tools and the links. And I'm going to talk about a term that I've constructed called nodal points. What's called a nodal point. And you've got internal, I've made this theory myself. You've got internal and external nodes, that is organizations, and those links have to be really clear. And the theme running through this is communications. One of the things we talked about here is time pirates. People will steal your time because they need to try and become efficient on the back of you. And that's what I was trying to say with regards to the research. How vigilant are you in planning your day? And as James said, in my financial planning practice, I used to have between 5 and 8 appointments every day. But you needed to understand what the significance was of the appointment. I was very focused. And here's something that will come up. At the moment, many of you are making your own appointments, either for Zoom or things like that. Under a remote system, why haven't you got someone else making your Zoom meetings of 5 to 7 Zoom meetings a day, setting the agendas, setting all the questions and so on? You either control your time or someone else is going to control your time. Now, for example, and James, I'm talking about routine, I send most of my emails between 4:30 and 6 o'clock every day. Now, I'm not saying that's correct, far from it. Part of listening to other people is to develop your own thinking. But the reason is you either control your own time or I control my own time. Who controls your time? So if I send my emails early, people are chasing me. I'm not chasing them. And in my emails of communication, could you please come back to me at 10 o'clock? I've anticipated that we can have a Zoom meeting at 10 o'clock today. And so what you're doing is the quality of your questions and directions and the nodes that you're dealing with. And each of people within the internal and external are linked. And that's why I call them nodal points. It's no good having an internal accounting part and someone else in another department not linked. That's where you get the breakdown and the frustration. And that's why I call those nodal points. You've got to make sure the communication is well within and well without. And if you look at what your time, like I say to people, if you want to earn $200,000 or $300,000 a year, I'm only making as an example, then your time has a value. It has a real value. There are just so many things to talk about in terms of reflecting upon utilizing your time. Like, for example, when I'm sending emails to some people, I say, I cannot come back to you till 3 o'clock this afternoon. It's about positioning. Oh, can you come back at 1 o'clock? I need that answer because I can't do that other thing for you. And people generally are pretty poor in communication. I'm just saying that. So you need to make sure who's in the tent and who's outside the tent. Now, I know I've spoken very quickly, James, but what I'm saying to you is, how do you plan your day? And I'm going to even be more critical. How do you plan your week? And I'm even going to be more critical. What does your month look like next month? Or are we going to put up the excuse of the coronavirus? Who's controlling the game here? What are your musts? I call them musts. And the other thing, as I said, what is the new normal? How do you function as the new normal? The old normal's gone. I can tell you now, I was speaking with people yesterday, and they said they don't think they'll ever have a face-to-face meeting again. Now, maybe that's a bit brave, but what they're saying is what we used to do running around for meetings, that world is gone. That world has absolutely gone. But what's fundamental to all of that is the whole concept of people. How are you linking with people? And they're very different things. Those paradigms need to be really clearly thought through. That's my thought I'm trying to say to people. So your questions are, what are you doing? And one of the things on here, James, you put here is looking at expectations and priorities. What do you want to achieve? They're very cruel, but very realistic questions. And I say to you, when you work out what your time's worth, you don't want to throw it away.
Now, Jim, I'm just going to jump in there. And an example you gave us offline was time pirates by way of a coffee at the local cafe.
Yep. Now,
for argument's sake, let's say our time was worth $100 an hour. If we were to sit down with somebody for a coffee for 30 minutes, that's $50 out of our pocket. How does that concept transpose on over into the digital space? And then what strategies can we implement to keep these time pirates, as we've defined them, at bay?
Well, the whole concept is, again, positioning with people, James, right? I'll just use an example. Mark Sinclair is on, you want to have a meeting with me. Now, I've got to assess very quickly, does our relationship have a currency? And so I've got to value that currency in a quantitative sense. So I say, James wants to talk to me. I don't know him very well. I think he wants more from me than I want from him. And so I've got a value on that. Sure, I never not talk to anyone, but I've got to be very clear. So in this moment, I would be saying in an email, James, thanks for contacting me. I note that you do X, Y, and Z. Do you have a particular reason why? And then I'll assess that. And then on Friday afternoons, I might take phone calls from 3 o'clock till 5. And so I say to you, I like what you put forward to me. Could we please have a Zoom meeting at 4:30? Now he's going to find that time because he wants something from me, not me from him. Do you understand the psychology of that? I'm simply saying that if you don't harness your time, then you're not going to be able to do the things that you're supposed to do. And that's the pirates. And the other term that I've got with time pirates is flotillas. You can actually find a whole boat of people that'll take time. And if you're not getting charged for that, if you're not earning something from it, you're wasting your time because it's not leading you anywhere. I call them cul-de-sac discussions, right? Many times you have with people, they'll start you off and you go, this is good. And then 100 meters, which is say 7 minutes into the conversation, it's going nowhere. So how do you put that on the back burner? And the best way of doing that is to try and do that. If the meeting is worth anything, people will put things on an email to you and you can respond to that. Thank you for your email. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you wanted to quote on my graphic arts. Or you didn't want to do this. And so it's really important. The quality of questions determines the quality. It's like being forensic. Detectives, accountants, solicitors. We've got to be really forensic in trying to find out what people want from our time. It's, all of us listening to this now, the only thing we have in common, respectfully, is 24 hours. We can say all the other things and they're nice, but the only thing that's quantitative is the 24 hours. What we do is up to ourselves. And when people say, I haven't got time, I'm wondering what that means.
So, Jim, certainly from what I'm hearing, communication's a big part of that time management with external entities and also having an idea or assigning a value to that currency and flow of information between two entities or two business people. I'd like to take us on to our final point, and that's the Eisenhower matrix. Now, I understand this is a tool that you use personally to manage your time. We've got it down there in the bottom corner, which is do, decide, delegate, and eliminate. Take us through that and how that might look in a practical setting.
Depending on what your role is and who you're responsible to and what you're responsible for. That's very important. In our business, I was a rainmaker, an income generator. So if I spent my time doing particular tasks, and let's be really clear, am I saying my tasks were more important than others? No, please don't draw that conclusion. What I am saying, there was a priority of the tasks that I had to do in order for the linkages to go forward and backwards. And that's very important because intermingled with all of that is trust. Very, very important that people are clear about what roles and what they're doing in that relationship. So, James, for me, the Eisenhower matrix, and you'll see there the points. I wrote this. For me, I'm trying to put it in a practical sense. I needed to try and reflect upon and be introspective about what was important and urgent, because that had a chain reaction. The doing, these are verbs, the doing. What had to be done? What were the consequences of it not being done? So I had to work through a task and a project that said what was important and urgent. That was done first. When I had Kylie, and she was wonderful, and Mark knows Kylie well, her task was to somewhere between 20 and 30 appointments every week. We built that relationship because if that was done, I could do my job. That meant that others could do theirs. It was very clear about what our roles were, and we enjoyed it. So we all knew what was important and we knew what was urgent. Secondly, I looked at things which were important but not urgent. I had to make a call. What is important but not urgent? And that would take on a different dimension in my daily activities. What was not important but urgent? In your business today, what is not really that important but is urgent? And there'll be tasks. And the last task that Eisenhower had, what is not important and not urgent.
And that, of course, would be the one that we eliminate. Is that correct?
That's correct. For example, in you drawing me back to my own work situation, respectfully, was I responsible and accountable, and they're two different things, for generating revenue in our business? Absolutely. But our team, our business said, Jim, you're not going to worry about the coffee pods. You're not going to worry about these. Am I saying they're less significant tasks? Not at all. Not at all. I'm saying that I had confidence in our people that the other tasks were not going to be, I wasn't going to be burdened with. Because for me to be successful, I had to do a particular week that reflected activity in a particular way. And so every one of us, I turned that off, every one of us had a role to play that allows us to have what I call purpose. So the circle around all of that is purpose. What is your purpose? And all important, take a car. No petrol, doesn't matter how expensive your car is, or electric or diesel or whatever. If you haven't got a spare tyre, think about when you had a flat tyre. So
yeah, absolutely. I think that word purpose is something really important, and I think we'll touch on that in a couple of slides' time. Certainly with you, Iona, when we start talking about teams in a remote environment. And I mean, this allocation and delegation and elimination of tasks, Jim, certainly in a remote environment. I mean, how much, I suppose, more important is it in a remote environment than it is in a face-to-face?
Well, I think they have the same output because you're dealing with people. That's what I'm saying. You have to be. I try to send somewhere between 5 and 10 emails or text messages just to people to say hi. Every day. Every day. Hi, how are you? How's Penny? How's John going at uni? Because we're dealing with people, and I don't care what occupation you're in. You can be a heart surgeon. You're in a very competitive industry. You can be whomever. But if you cannot communicate those things that we've been talking about today, the new normal, you won't survive in the new normal.
Excellent. Well, it is. It really is the new normal. I mean, there's no question about it. Thank you very much, Jim. Now, moving on to company culture, and establishing that in a remote environment can be very different to the face-to-face. And there's obviously a number of benefits in having a strong company culture. Improved employee engagement, productivity, retention, and of course, face-to-face communication, which we've touched on multiple times. Iona, I'm going to hand on over to you. And there was some research done which said there was a big move to digital workplaces and remote working. But what they've found is they begin to wind it back a little bit because it was having a negative impact on company culture. Okay, now the situation that many people are in now is that there really isn't a choice to, whether or not they can work remotely. So how do you make company culture a sustainable organisational strategy in a remote environment? I mean, what are some of the things that you've put in place, you've seen that have been successful over the years, and why do you think they've worked?
I think the first strategy that we have listed here on this slide, clearly define and align organisational goals, is the key, and it really is the linchpin of a successful transition to remote working or working with diverse remote teams. Expectations need to be clear, and that's organisational expectations for itself, as well as our expectations for our different team members. Team members, of course, have very defined roles depending on the organisation. Sometimes we have isolated people who do specific tasks. So we need to assure those people that we understand what their role is, and we understand that they understand what the organisation's expectation is of how they go about what they do, and that needs to be communicated very clearly and very simply, and the person needs to be supported. Sometimes when we're outside an office environment and we're working, we don't consider how many small questions we ask. Where do I find that? What does that mean? You know, we often ask for definitions. And that is one of the key support things, is providing those definitions to people and being able to answer those small questions in a different way. So again, it's about avoiding isolation. The sense of isolation can be a demotivator for so many people in so many ways. People need to, our team members and our workmates need to know that they can contact somebody, or they can get a response to the small questions as well as the big ones, and that they can collaborate and explore things. We work with very creative, collaborative teams and lean teams, and they often will want to be working towards a solution. So by avoiding isolation and maintaining those ongoing connections in a very positive way, and being able to provide solutions for people. And it's really about support and solutions. And individual and team milestones, as you've got here, and celebrate big things, small things. Birthdays, for example. Usually within our office environment, we have a birthday cake for people. As we've moved, and this is a perfect example of organisational culture and changing how we interpret our culture and we enact that culture with our teams. So we're utilising an online order service, and we're actually delivering chocolate flowers and chocolate buckets to people instead of having a birthday cake in the office. So we're maintaining that culture as we go forward. We're celebrating things with people. We celebrate milestones. And we do that when we come together at the end of the day, every day, as a team. And so FaceTime, as you've got here, that face-to-face communication. And again, kindness and fun is very, very important, because that is also part of our natures. We want to be kind to people, and we also want to feel happy. So having good quality conversations that aren't necessarily just about work is very, very important as well.
And look, I'm going to stay with you, Iona, and I think it continues on nicely from what we've just been talking about, and this is supporting and managing remote staff. We've looked at the toolbox. We've looked at some of the communication strategies. The technology that's available, and I think it really is quite easy to fall into that trap of leaning on, bar charts, project management software updates, emojis in chats, things like that. But there is that human element, irrespective of what technology or what platform you're using and whatever your workplace looks like. We saw that, there is up to, like a US study, there was a 13% increase in performance for employees working from home. But that doesn't just happen by chance. And I know personally, the evolution or stepping into the working from home environment, it's a skill until itself. And management really needs to lead employees, train them on how to effectively work from home. What are some of the things that you've been doing, or some of the research shows, assist in, I suppose, in this process?
So I think what's really important here, and it's something that we often overlook, is that most organisations do some workforce planning. We reassess our workforce plan and our workforce plan every 12 months. And because we may have, like most organisations, we may have changed our priorities and our method of operation, or we may be working in different environments. We may be introducing different things, so we need to change our team structures. So one of the things that is very, very important is looking at our workforce planning, looking at the structure of that, the structure of job families, and the tools that those job families need to actually have to be able to complete the tasks that they have to do. And incorporating things like real-time feedback. Real-time feedback is very, very important. That communication element and building this into our planning and building it into our job families and the tasks that are required. That is incredibly important. Professional development and professional education is an ongoing process. And We can take as much planning as we like, but if we're not continuously developing and continuously learning, we're not developing in our roles as well, and we can't support our team members as well, and teams sometimes don't function. So ensuring that professional development continues to happen is very, very important, and it doesn't matter what environment you're in. One of the great things about being able to work in this type of environment that we're all working in at the moment remotely is that we can introduce additional elements of professional development into how we go about working with our teams. So we can introduce new tools, we can introduce new skills, we can demonstrate that in real time with them. Define goals for your teams and for yourself, and the organisation. Decide how, with the new normal as far as working is concerned, how that's going to impact on our organisation, how it's going to impact on our priorities as an organisation and our strategy. Revisit our strategy. And I'll pass over to Mark in a moment to talk about how we've incorporated this new way of working into our strategies. And be proactive. Step forward and communicate more with your teams. It doesn't necessarily mean micromanaging. It may actually be supporting your teams and your team members, and to provide them with additional equipment, provide them with alternative ways of working, provide them with revised KPIs. If you have people in positions where they have defined KPIs. That's very, very important, because as the nature of our work has changed working remotely, so too and that will affect the actual performance indicators. So revise them, revisit them. Look at your workforce planning, look at your job families, look at what they need, and really focus on how we support people to achieve the tasks that they would normally need to achieve in their roles. Mark, can I just pass across to you to actually speak a little bit towards redefining strategy for organisations with remote working and remote working teams?
Well, look, I think it brings us to the thought about what's the new normal in terms of an organisation. And it's probably not all teams off-site and no office, right? And it's probably a blend and a balance, and part of that is actually giving the say to some extent to the employees. Like, some people just work poorly at home, they get distracted and things of that nature, and that might not work that well. Some employees are very happy, or some people are very happy to work 2 days off-site, 3 days, 4 days, 1 day, whatever it might be. So there's a blend. So it's really important, I think, if I just pick up on what both Jim and Iona have said, it's really important to have those real conversations with people. Sometimes people just don't say, look, I'm struggling here, I'm feeling a bit isolated or disconnected, or I feel like I'm missing out on opportunities because I'm remote. You actually need to give the right environment online in the communications to be able to raise those conversations, one-to-one conversations, you name it. So, it's going to be different for every organisation, but clearly the new normal will be a blended approach. Some people really appreciate it. When it's more transactional, they want to be right there in front of the, with other people in a team, passing things across and you name it. So look, when you start to blend it into the strategy going forward, we've got, internal strategy and we've got external strategy in the organisation. So internally, we're really trying to get a high-performing team, where everyone is feeling valued and there's a sense of commitment and we're achieving our goals. So as to Iona's point, you have really clear goals at an organisation level, an individual level, and you celebrate those. So how well we're going towards something, or if we're not doing something properly, we actually say, look, we're disappointed in this. We actually need everyone's commitment and involvement in this particular process. So again, it's about authentic conversations. But look, in today's world where we're trying to get the best talent for our organisation, they're all not just going to reside in a 3-kilometre radius of your office. They're going to be all over the place, and you want to be able to engage them and onboard them really quickly in terms of creating that high-performing team. So the thinking about your organisational workforce going forward is the very best people located anywhere in the world, perhaps giving time zone benefits so that you can cover the phone in different hours, New Zealand, Perth, overseas, you name it. And the best people, sometimes, you've got really great people in your organisation and they, for family reasons, have a need to move somewhere else, different state, different country. You don't want to lose them. So the trick is, how do you maintain them, engage them, so they know the processes and the like. So, if we went back 10 years ago, you say, oh, well, it's all too hard. But today the technology is easy. The barrier of entry, which is, getting used to the technology and working remotely and just testing that it works, we've tested it. The barrier entry's gone through. We're in this new world now where we're going, this is not that hard. So that's important. And then if you think about from an external strategic point of view, we've got our company goals, right? You've got your strategic initiatives, some of those, short term, most of them tend to be longer term and even longer than you might think. But at the end of the day, they're a plan and they're steps, and you share them with everyone, right? And, sometimes, I think to Jim's point, we don't communicate that well sometimes to people. And even when you bring them in a room together and you lay out the plan and you talk it through, you haven't necessarily engaged fully to the point where they're on board and might understand what you're trying to do, but they actually don't own the plan. So you end up with a team all kicking in different directions. The goalposts are not that clear. One of the things with being remote like this is we're all aware that we've got to put that little bit of extra effort to communicate those plans, to really discuss them, to get people's input, and then to really reward that. So I think that going online like this in this virtual way is inclusive. You get your whole team in one place, and you've got it's just in your face that are people on board or not, and how do we do that? So you're really focused on that engagement piece. So I think we're, a much better, more productive, and more cohesive team as a result. And so that's the exciting bit about this. And the other part, of course, is, we do need a bit of freedom at climbing up the wall, sometimes being without people contact. So you need that mix as well. So the office of the future, I think we're going to be planning perhaps for the same space, maybe a smaller space, but it's the opportunity for people to come in and out and work remotely, work in the office, come together for certain events, but certainly just to get everyone around the world, all your team, in one place on a really regular basis, engenders a new strong culture, which is exciting.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mark. And before we close off, Jim, have you got any final comments that you'd like to make?
Only for the people who are listening to this to really critically think what May will look like for them. No, to really critically think and reflect. And the thing I want them to stress that I stress in my life is what is negotiable and what is not negotiable. And that's very clear, and that's really important that people understand what and when they can contact you, when they can get things done. And you've broken down, like project management, when you've broken it down into parts that everyone fully understands and owns. That's critical. That's the challenge.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much to our panel team of panelists today for your insight into this very exciting topic and very pertinent topic at the moment. Thank you for everybody who tuned into view, and stay tuned as we'll have more episodes within the Mentor Education Business Insight series coming up.